Again, thank you everybody for joining us. If you don't know me, I'm Sarah Puccini. I'm the Assistant Director of the Lackawanna Historical Society. Since it is Black History Month, we're presenting our program today on the Destination Freedom Program at the Waverly Community House. We're joined today with EJ Murphy. EJ is the educator and coordinator of Destination Freedom Program at the COM. He is an Abington native, graduated at Abington Heights, and his day job is he's a teacher at Howard Gardner. So we're very excited for EJ to join us, and he'll talk a little bit about the Destination Freedom Tour in Waverly and what they have going on and how the program was started. So EJ, if you want to take it away.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for coming. I'm very excited to be here. I have a lot to talk about today. The Destination Freedom Project is something that's very important to me and really everyone here at the COM. So I'm kind of going to break this up in kind of two different sections of the talk, I guess. First part is just to talk about the program, the development of the program, and some of the projects that we have going on right now besides just the walking tour that I think a lot of people here are probably somewhat aware of. I see a lot of familiar faces here. And after that, I'm going to talk a little bit about the tour itself. I do have a little PowerPoint here, so I'll be able to share some images so you're not just staring at my face the whole time. Of some things that we talk about on the tour, and just to highlight some of the overall themes of what you can learn about if you come and take the tour and kind of immerse yourself in our program. So that's what we're going to kind of get started here. And I'm glad I see some, again, not just familiar faces, but some familiar names here of people who are in on the meeting. So I'm glad that I have some shout outs that I have to give here at the very beginning. So the Destination Freedom Program really started to come into fruition in 2016, and most of the legwork for really what the tour is even today was done by Gia Ravello, who I could see is on the chat here, but not on the chat. So I just want to give her a shout out because from really where we're at today, from the very beginning is really centered around the work that Gia has done at the very beginning of setting the tour up. The tour kind of originated as a self-guided walking tour. And a lot of the research for the tour came from, various manuscripts and stuff like that and books. And again, another guest that I can see sitting here is Mr. Jim Remsen, who I want to give another shout out to. Hi, Mr. Remsen, I'm honored that you're here with us today. I actually have his book, which really tells the story that we try to emphasize kind of on the tour of what happened in Waverly in the years surrounding the Civil War era, not just with the Underground Railroad, but with the issues leading up to the war, what happened during the war itself with Waverly and local residents, and then what happened after the war. And again, I just want to give a shout out. I pretty much have his book with me almost at all times. His book, Embattled Freedom, again, is sort of where we got a lot of the research to kind of continue on with, diving into this subject for the tour. So again, I can't thank Mr. Remsen enough, and I'm glad he's here today, to join our talk. So the tour again we started to continue to develop it from 2016 into 2017. 2017 was when we kind of really launched the program and started giving tours. We started doing field trips, stuff like that. This was actually before I even got involved in the project. It originated sort of as a self-guided tour, but we did do guided tours from the beginning, and again, field trip tours, stuff like that. I joined the project a couple years ago, the summer of 2019. And that's when we started really doing a lot of our original kind of partnerships with local organizations that helped kind of spur on interest in the program. We had a couple great partnerships with the Abington Community Library and some of the amazing people who work there. I have to give a shout out to Renee Roberts, who again is been instrumental. She works at the library. Been instrumental in helping us kind of get programming kicked off here. And we did a couple really big guided tours in the summer of 2019. Which again started to gain, we started to see interest in the program. We had a lot of great coverage in the press. So we had a couple news stories, we were on TV a couple times, stuff like that. So we really had, in a really short amount of time, a lot of interest garnered in our program, which again, really kind of helped to bring it to the point that it's at today. So from there, again, obviously with the pandemic and COVID and everything, last summer we saw, some changes in our approach and what we started to do. So besides just looking at tours, we started to kind of build the program beyond that. Again, especially with Gia at the helm, we also kind of started to turn the program into an educational program. We really, beyond giving field trips, we wanted this to be a resource that teachers and schools can use in classrooms to help not just, again, help our mission here at the COM, but to really help everyone's understanding of the history that we're trying to tell here. And that's been a great success so far. We're still kind of really developing that aspect of it, but again, we've seen again interest from some of the local schools. Again, we've had some couple field trips in the past few years, and that's been going great as well. We also are currently in development of a display room that we're putting together. That's going to have a lot of different artifacts from the Civil War era, the era that we talk about on the tour, and things that really highlight and again can kind of bring to life some of the things that we highlight when we're giving tours, or even when I'm discussing programs or things like that. And that's going to be coming soon. Again, that's another project that's in development right now. And we, again, are lucky to have great relationships with some organizations in the area. Again, I have to shout out the Historical Society, not just for inviting me here today to talk, but we also have some amazing projects in the works with them that hopefully we'll be able to start unveiling in the near future. But again, so we've seen a lot of growth in this program, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that the history that we are trying to highlight here is something that is now a national narrative. It's not just something that we can tell locally. It's something that, throughout the country, the issues that we bring up are things that are becoming national discourse. And again, people's understanding or want to understand this era, I think really has driven a lot of the progress that we've seen in the program and the interest that we've seen in our tours. And again, I think it all coming together, it really makes for an important resource for not just our community, but really anyone in the area who feels that they want to come in and take advantage of the resources that we have here. So again, just as a program, it's been really great to see the growth, and we've had so many people who've been involved in that, and it's again just something I'm very proud to have been able to help with over the past few years. So I guess at this point, I'll kind of get into more of the history that we actually talk about on the tour. I have some pictures here that you can see. I'm not going to give away too much, just for those of you who have not been on the tour. I don't want to have to dissuade you from wanting to come here. We are giving, actually, before I even forget to mention, I might forget before the program's over, but we are actually currently giving tours. We have obviously limited limited guidelines and stuff that we follow because of the pandemic, but we are still giving guided tours. So if you haven't given or haven't taken a tour, you can either call us at the Waverly Community House, or we do have a website, a brand new website, which we also just developed recently, that we will share. It's waverlywalkingtours.com. I'm sure we'll be able to share links and stuff on social media after the talk is over. We also have an Instagram page at Destination Freedom Waverly, all one word. So again, all these things that we've been doing over the past few months and few years, just really try to highlight again that what the center of our program is, and that is the history that we try to tell about Waverly, and really just not just Waverly, but how Waverly connects to all different areas in northeastern Pennsylvania, and even beyond the borders of Pennsylvania. We talk a lot about some of the border towns of New York State and the Southern Tier. And again, we try to bring all these different stories together to show, really how this whole area was a central part in not just the Underground Railroad, but all of the events and things going on during that time period. So, like I said, I do have a little PowerPoint here, so I'm going to see, hopefully this works on first try. Again, I am a teacher, and we've been Zooming a lot with remote work, so I know exactly how everything can fail and go terribly. I'm hoping that we don't have to worry about that. Okay, I'm hoping that everyone is looking at a PowerPoint with a map here of Eastern Pennsylvania. I hope that's what everyone's seeing. Okay, I got a thumbs up from Sarah, so we're good. Okay, perfect, awesome. So this is a map from William J. Swatala's book, The Underground Railroad in Pennsylvania. He's really, when it comes to the routes of the Underground Railroad and the way that actually, kind of things ever actually worked, in terms of the locations. I like to refer to his maps. They're very detailed and again, kind of show, kind of the trajectory of where you were, if you were, using the Underground Railroad, where you would go and how you would get there. So as you can see, Waverly, I always talk about Waverly as in terms of its location, geographic location and importance for the Underground Railroad. I always talk about it as a central location. And sometimes people give me weird looks like Waverly is central to what, But when you look at the map here, you can kind of see how it plays an important an important juncture from the middle kind of, middle Pennsylvania area to northern Pennsylvania, and then on to New York, and then, eventually to possibly Canada or other places, depending on where you're trying to get to. So again, Waverly's kind of in that little central area. And that's kind of what I like to start with on the tour, is just the geographic kind of, notion of where we're actually standing, which is, I think, a good thing to get into with a lot of people. And then we kind of get into some of the residents. So the first stop on the tour is the home of Leonard Batchelor. He was one of the local abolitionists, Underground Railroad kind of conductors in the area. And we try to tell not just his involvement in the Underground Railroad, but, and we do this with the various figures that we highlight on the tour. We get into their backgrounds, how they came to be in the positions that they were in, why, not only what brought them to Waverly, but their belief system, what led them to take the actions they took. And then we try to, as much as we can, get into family backgrounds too, so we can give a kind of whole picture to some of the lives of the people on our tour. So again, I'm not going to give away too much, but one of the things I like to highlight with Leonard Batchelor is the fact that he was from Massachusetts. And what is not totally unique about Waverly, but what makes Waverly's story kind of unique and changes the narrative of it, is the fact that Waverly was comprised of a lot of settlers from different areas. And we had, and this kind of even goes back to the Yankee-Pennamite Wars, leading up to and kind of revolutionary and early America. But with this idea with New Englanders coming here and bringing abolitionist sentiment to the area that wasn't hugely prevalent, I would say, in the area largely. But a lot of the Waverly residents are New England transplants, and they kind of, brought different belief systems to the area. And that kind of aided in Waverly's role in the Underground Railroad. A lot of the people who were involved in it were involved because of these beliefs. And again, we try to kind of highlight how that came to be in Waverly. And again, Leonard Batchelor is just one of those figures. Again, and we also, the Underground Railroad is the central part of the story of what we do, what we talk about on our tour and our program as a whole. So what you're looking at here are two of the graves that we highlight. One is in the Waverly United Methodist Church Cemetery, and one is in Hickory Grove Cemetery. The larger picture that you're looking at is the grave of George Keyes Sr. George Keyes Sr. is sort of the founding father of, and I believe that's if I remember correctly, that's the term that Mr. Remsen used in his book, was sort of like kind of the founding father of Waverly's African American community. And he was the first escaped enslaved person who made his way here and kind of settled here. And he became a very prominent citizen in the area. You can tell that by his burial site in the Waverly United Methodist Cemetery. We kind of get into the background of that on the tour. But we also kind of get into different, again, backgrounds with these people, but we also tell the story of the trajectory of their lives. So Keyes' story kind of starts with his escape to the home of Rodman Sisson, whose grave you're looking at in the top corner there. And again, his story is central to Waverly's really main story as a hub of the Underground Railroad, and a place that formerly enslaved people and freeborn African Americans came to make a life. And again, Keyes was kind of one of the founding fathers of that community. And again, there's different stories to tell here just besides the Underground Railroad aspect of it. And that was one of the things I was really interested in when I first started kind of diving into the background of this story, was seeing how the stories went in all different directions from that Underground Railroad kind of hub, and what happened to a lot of the people that we highlight here in the years, not leading up to and then before, the Underground Railroad, and then eventually the Civil War. So again, one of the things I do like to highlight, especially with the figures who we talk about, the formerly enslaved who came here via the Underground Railroad, to see what the trajectory of their lives was, because a lot of people, and especially, I see this especially with some of my students, especially younger students, they know the Underground Railroad, they know the story of the Underground Railroad, they all know Harriet Tubman and everything like that, but a lot of the times for them, the story stops with, they traveled the Underground Railroad, they made their way to freedom, and then usually that's kind of it at a lot of points. That's where the understanding kind of stops. And the one thing I'd like to highlight is the lives afterwards, after they came to a place like Waverly, or wherever it was that people were trying to make their way to, what happened afterwards. And that's one of the things that I like to do, especially, again, as you see here, a lot of the graves that you're looking, actually all the graves that you're looking at are some of the formerly enslaved residents of Waverly who actually went and fought in the Civil War in African-American regiments, which again, that's a whole, we tell that whole story, the background of the trajectory of that, how that came to be. And we try to, again, connect the Underground Railroad story to what happened after. And a big part of that is, again, a lot of, for a lot of our figures on the tour, as you can see, is the military background. So again, that's a big chunk of the story that we try to tell. And again, we also, I like to, again, not to forget this, but we also, the families, you know, what happened with the families when these guys went off to war? What happened with the families when they came back? A lot of the wives and the children obviously outlived these men who went and fought. So what happened in their lives afterwards? And that's a thing that we, again, try to connect from the Underground Railroad and the issues that led up to that, all the way into, you know, the post-war Reconstruction period, which again is, I think, an important thing to do, is to kind of connect those dots. And that's something that I think people aren't expecting when they come here for the tour. I think a lot of times people are just expecting to see, you know, houses that were involved in the Underground Railroad and hear about how the formerly enslaved made their way here. And that's kind of it. But we have tried to kind of expand on that to tell a more inclusive and broad story. And again, you know, the military exploits are exciting to talk about because they were very celebrated in papers. And again, you can see here, the clip on the left, I believe, is from Pittsburgh paper. Again, which you can see they're talking about the battle or siege of Petersburg, battles taking place outside of Petersburg. That's one of the areas that a lot of the Waverly residents actually fought, was around the city of Petersburg, Virginia. And again, we tell the kind of background of that in the tour as well. And again, doing seeing the accounts in the newspapers, the firsthand research, all that is really, it really just kind of brings home, you know, the whole story for us. And that's one of the things that we try to do with, again, the expansion of our program. Some of the things that we're going to have on display in our display room are going to be old newspapers and things that you can see, local newspapers that highlight, you know, things that were going on in the area during this time period, which again is a really exciting thing to be able to do. This is a famous painting, again, you know, famously highlighted. Again, Mr. Remsen highlighted it in his book. It was one of the first places that I saw it. It really is an amazing painting. This is kind of an enhanced version of it. But this is a charge outside of Petersburg, Virginia, where, again, a lot of the Waverly residents fought. And again, their military exploits were widely celebrated. And, you know, this painting actually to this day hangs in the West Point Museum at the Military Academy at West Point, New York. So again, it just goes to show that, you know, besides this Underground Railroad tale and the things that these amazing feats that, you know, these people, you know, accomplished on their path to freedom, they did things after just, you know, making their way to places like Waverly. And again, this is something that we try to emphasize and highlight. Okay, and then again, we talk about some of the other, this is actually George Keyes Jr., George Keyes Sr.'s son. He also went and fought in the war. He became a very prominent visual member of the GAR, the Grand Army of the Republic, the largest Civil War veterans group in the country in the years after the war. And as you can see here, he was a flag bearer at a reunion that took place at Naog Park in Scranton. And again, this is we try to tell the background of these people, but also, again, their post-war stories. And Keyes was well known in social circles around northeastern Pennsylvania and Scranton particularly. He ended up being a coachman for Ira Tripp of the locally famous Tripp family. And again, we tell the whole kind of background of that as well. So again, we tie in the families, you know, and you know what happened in their whole lives, and not just you know, in this Underground Railroad story that plays the center of our program. Again, you know, you can tie in pop culture. One of the graves in the cemetery, the Hickory Grove Cemetery, that is one of the stops on our tour, is the grave of Samuel Thomas, who was a cook in the 54th Massachusetts Regiment, which was famously highlighted in the movie Glory. You guys can see the movie poster here with Matthew Broderick, Denzel Washington, and Morgan Freeman. So again, we try to tie in all sorts of different things, not just the history of it, but also how our history kind of ties into pop culture and our world today. which again, I think drives people's interest is what's going on today and how we see these events through the lens of our time period. And again, more local people, this is George Fell. I actually have, since I put this PowerPoint together, I found a much better picture of Sergeant George O. Fell here. Again, we tell the story of him and his family on the tour. His family, particularly him and his brother, famously fought at the Battle of Gettysburg. And George Fell, unfortunately, didn't make it through the battle. And again, we tell his story and how his family dealt with his death and all that kind of stuff. So again, the Underground Railroad plays the center of our story, but it really brings together the whole story of Waverly as a whole during this time period. Again, as I keep on saying. And again, we have more local Civil War veterans who maybe don't necessarily play an integral part in our tour, but we highlight some of them anyway. This is Sergeant George Perry, who fought with the 143rd Pennsylvania, the same regiment as George Fell, as you saw in the last slide. Again, more Civil War veterans. This is Thomas Stone. He was killed during the 7 days battles before Richmond, Virginia, the Confederate capital, in 1862. Again, this is a military campaign that I like to highlight on the tour because it was a really kind of war trajectory changing event. So the fact that we have local residents who played such integral parts in these events is again a really exciting thing to be able to bring to the public. So again, I'm not going to go through every single grave that we have on the tour, but besides military history and soldiers and the Underground Railroad, we do bring in social aspects. We talk about religion on the tour. A couple of the local churches play pretty central stops on our tour. You can see the United Methodist Church here on the right with the crowd, and then the First Baptist Church of Waverly on the left there. Again, two of some of the oldest institutions in the area. And again, it's nice to be able to kind of tell the background of how they played a role in not just people's everyday lives, but how they thought about issues like slavery and the Underground Railroad and what was happening in their town around them, which again is, I think, a really interesting thing to look at. This is Dr. Andrew Bedford. His home is probably my favorite house in Waverly. It actually stands right across from the Waverly Community House. And again, his legacy is extremely complicated. He was a prominent politician in the area. He was one of the early champions of the Leggett's Gap Railroad. And again, he plays a really, again, essential part because he has his hands in so many different aspects of Waverly's community and Northeastern Pennsylvania's community as a whole. And even at the state level, he had, again, as a prominent politician, he played a very important role in a state constitutional convention that happened in the kind of earlier 1800s that we, again, get into the background of on the tour. And again, his story, I think, highlights more than any of them on our tours, the complicated legacy of not just Waverly, but not just the North, but our country as a whole during the Civil War era. There are so many ins and outs of a lot of people's stories, and Bedford kind of highlights that. So that's again something that we try to bring to the table besides just the Underground Railroad story. And then we look at some voting numbers here. This is we can talk about politics on the tour as well. We're looking at the election of 1864. So one of the things that we do on the tour is we kind of compare voting numbers. For now, I'll keep it to the 1864 election, but I like to look at we'll look at Waverly here in a second, just to kind of highlight one. If you're in an area that you can see maybe your town or anything like that, you can take a look for it. But you can see in the 1864 election, this is Abraham Lincoln's re-election bid, and this is after years of war. And so people were going to the polls and essentially kind of saying, kind of giving their voice about how they thought the war was going. And it's interesting to look at. You can see Abraham Lincoln was running against one of his former commanding officers, George B. McClellan. And McClellan was a little bit more of a moderate in terms of his politics. And I think that attracted a lot of people, especially in Northeastern Pennsylvania. You can see that Waverly actually voted against, again, these are newspaper numbers, so you got to take them for what they're worth, but voted one vote against Abraham Lincoln, 29-28 in the election of 1864. And again, you can see that Northeastern Pennsylvania was a particularly difficult place for Abraham Lincoln, which is funny that we're talking about him today. It is his birthday, if I'm recalling correctly. So he actually struggled in northeastern Pennsylvania in terms of rallying support, and you can kind of see that with the voting numbers here. So again, we don't just talk about the Underground Railroad, we tie in all sorts of different aspects: military history, social history, political history, all that. And again, it really, what my goal is when I give tours, and I'm sure, the goal of our program is to just that our guests and people who immerse themselves in our programming and stuff like that, that you're able to walk away with a clear picture of the entire time period. And not just, not just the Underground Railroad, which is the central part of our story, but how that played a role and led to so many other things. And that's something, again, that I think is really important for us to start to share and bring to people. But I think that's just about it when it comes to visuals here. So so that's my my big spiel about our tour and our program. I hope you all enjoyed it. I guess now, Sarah, now is when we open it up, I think, a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, if anybody has any questions as we're going along, I did mute everyone as we got started. So if you have a question, please remember to unmute yourselves. And I did put the link to the Destination Freedom website in the chat box. So if you're looking for more information, the link is there. But in the meantime, if anyone has any other questions, EJ, I'm glad you shared the photos of the cemetery, particularly since the cemetery is rather snowbound now.
Yes,
so it's good to see that part that may not be accessible immediately, at least for the tour. So again, if anyone has any questions about tours or about the Destination Freedom program in Waverly, please feel free to chime in.
EJ, how you doing?
Hi, good. How are you?
Long time no see. How's your old man?
Oh, he's good. He's actually, I believe I saw him in here somewhere.
I think he's here somewhere.
Did you?
Yeah, he's being shy. His camera's off. Don't worry about him.
No, I'm really impressed by this presentation. That was really awesome, man. I'm a member of the Waverly Lodge over here of the Masons and everything like that. Our original lodge was right there where the community center is, the original one. And it's really interesting to find out more. I mean, I was just working up there not too long ago through Waverly, and just to sit there and drive through Waverly just every day in the truck and seeing those old houses and pointing them out to the guys that I was working with, they were fascinated by everything in it, and it was really interesting. So it's really nice to get more information about this, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Well, it's actually funny you mentioned the old buildings where the comm is now. We actually do have I have a binder that I use on our tours that has a bunch of pictures and stuff, and we actually have some cool pictures of all the old buildings that used to stand on the road where the comm is now. So if you're ever stopping by, I can I got some images to show you.
Awesome! I can't wait.
This is Jim. Oh, go ahead.
Okay. A very good presentation. I'm curious about descendants of some of these individuals you talked about, and if they play any role in today's this display that you have going at the com.
Yeah. So in terms of the residents of the formerly enslaved who came here, there were a lot of factors that led their families to go elsewhere. Most of it was economic. You had places like Scranton and Binghamton that were popping up that provided employment opportunities elsewhere. You did also, like I said, northeastern Pennsylvania was a very complicated area. There was a lot of opposition to, especially once the war was over and you saw the abolition of slavery. You saw a lot of opposition to African-American civil rights in the area, and that was something that again made some areas in northeastern Pennsylvania not exactly quite as friendly as they might have been during other time periods. But so there were a couple different factors that drove people away. But in terms of some of the other local residents, some of the settlers, you saw there are some families actually that are still today. There's the Stone family who again are a couple of the residents we highlight on the tour. So there are still Stones, I believe, who live in Waverly today. Millers, there are a lot of familiar names that Waverly residents will know. That again, they do play a role in the years afterwards, especially when it comes to, if we're going to relate it to stuff that we talked about on the tour, when it comes to getting some of the Civil War veterans, African-American and white Civil War veterans, some of their benefits in the post-war period. And that's where a lot of Waverly residents kind of did start to come together and help out in that regard. So yeah, so there is an impact in the post-war years and all that, and we talk about that to an extent on the tour. We get into the kind of the Reconstruction years, but yeah, so there is a lasting impact from some of those residents. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
On your
Jim, did you
tour,
have-
do
I'm
you
sorry,
talk
Jillian?
about the homes on Abington Road that sheltered a lot of the slaves? Do you bring that into the his?
Yeah, absolutely. So we don't highlight the one thing I tell people is we don't highlight like every house in the Waverly Historic District, because there is the Waverly Historic District kind of comprises the area the square area that the comm is on. We don't highlight all of the houses. We kind of just pick and choose a couple that kind of, again, emphasize some of the stories that bring all of the larger picture together as well, not just the local picture.
Mhm.
So we do talk about some of them, but not all of them. Depends on what house it is.
Yeah, thank you. It was a
Yeah,
good,
of course.
I enjoyed your presentation. It was really good.
Oh, thank you very much.
And actually, where I live on Abington Road, there's several homes that sheltered the slaves. So that's why I brought that question up.
Yeah, I wish we were able to highlight more. The one thing about Abington Road now is it's a little bit of a dangerous place to walk on when you're getting away from the comm. So we try to be as safe as we can on our
And
tours.
this is a couple of miles from the Waverly Comm.
Yeah, so there you go. It's a hike.
A long walk.
Yeah.
Jim, did you have a question or a comment before?
Yeah, hi, Sarah, thanks. Yeah, congratulations on these tours. They sound terrific.
Thank you.
And I love your passion in speaking about it as well. And yeah, you're right. It's very complicated history with two sides to it. And I'm glad you bring out both those sides. So can you talk a little bit more about what are the physical things that you will have in the display room? It's wonderful if you've been able to pull things together.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a lot of prints, old prints that relate, especially because military prints are a little bit easier to come by. So we have a lot of prints that highlight sort of the military aspect that we talk about on the tour. To give an example, we have a print of the fall of Richmond at the end of the Civil War. And that the plan is to kind of use that to tell the role that the 22nd United States Colored Troops Regiment, which I know you know about, the role they played in the fall of Richmond and the end of the war and all that kind of stuff. We also have, again, something that you mentioned in your book, the Crackle Barrel Congress. I found in one of the Lackawanna Register who reported on that meeting. I have the paper of that and the whole description of that meeting and everything. We have that framed and that'll be going up as well. Those are some of the things that we have. And again, we have other prints. We have maps, area maps of the time period that we're going to go up as well. I don't know if are we too early, Sarah, to talk about our.
No, go right ahead. When we're done with our cataloging on our end, the Historical Society will also be loaning a few pieces to the Waverly Comm for a year to be on part of the display from our Civil War collection. I know there's some of the heavier objects are Hitchcock's sword and the Ripple cane from Ezra Ripple's experiences in the prison camps Andersonville and in Florence, and also the memoir book from the Waverly GAR post. We'll be giving the original book itself and also the transcriptions. People will be able to actually flip through those pages and to read, kind of in their own words, the stories of the soldiers from Waverly. So, speak on our end.
You may remember I spoke at the comm and there was a reenactor who came with the battle flag of the 22nd, a very powerful battle flag. That may be something you could obtain or get a large image of that.
Yeah, I was actually at that talk, and that was fantastic. One of the prints that I have, it's just a black and white print that I got from the Library of Congress, but we actually do have a printout of that's going to be hung up as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. That is, in terms of battle flags and sending a powerful message, that's probably one of the best.
Right. Congratulations.
So but we're really excited. I'm glad that we were able to talk about that because that's one thing I am really excited about. Besides just the artifacts that we already have, which again we do have plenty of our own already, but the artifacts that we're going to have on loan from the Historical Society are really gonna be able to help us tell a really interesting story in history. So that's one of the projects that we have coming up that I'm really excited about. So I'm glad we were able to kind of give like a semi formal announcement about it.
EJ, my name is Marla Hoskins. I live in New Mexico, but I have my family has very deep roots in Pennsylvania, and I'm a descendant of Deacon John Phillips. I don't know if you ever encountered that name, but I think he founded the Baptist Church, or maybe that was he started out in Pittston, then he ended up in Waverly. But I actually came a couple of years ago. I made a trip to Pennsylvania. Actually, Mary Ann and Sarah will remember this, to do some genealogical research. And I went to Waverly because I was like astounded. I'd heard the whole Underground Railroad thing. And unfortunately, you know, I was there for 3 or 4 days. I wanted to go to the whole Wyoming massacre thing on July 3rd. And then I thought, oh, I'll go up to Waverly. And I got there, and of course, everything was closed. It was July 4th. I didn't really think that through. But I walked Hickory Grove, and I was looking for the graves of the African Americans, the former slaves. And I didn't do an exhaustive search, but I, drove around, got out, walked around. Are they in a particular area? And oh, by the way, I wanted to do your tour, and I'm going to come back to do it. So your presentation was fantastic, by the way.
Oh, thank you so much. And thanks for joining us from so far away. That's fantastic. But yes, they actually, they are. If you might have missed it because it is kind of towards the back of the cemetery when you're coming in from the front entrance.
Okay.
It's row 5 that they're all kind of in. And it could be tough. Yeah, if you're just kind of walking around, it could be a bit of a tough spot, but it is luckily, if you ever make your way back and if you're in Hickory Grove and you see the sign for row 5, which actually I think I stopped at Hickory Grove before it snowed when I was able to get in there still. And I think someone might have accidentally taken out one of the signs for the thing. But there's a sign that says row 5. And they are right along that row. You don't even need to walk really into the cemetery. You can kind of walk right along the sidewalk there, and that's where they are.
Okay.
But yeah, so that's a great question. That's something that people ask all the time. Are they all in one spot? And for the most part, yeah, they are. Now it's interesting because they're in a separate spot than where the military section is, where the Civil War section is in the cemetery, which I think is. An interesting thing to look at.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any other questions or anything else to add? All right. Well, again, thank you everybody for coming. EJ, thank you for joining us and presenting such an interesting presentation about the Destination Freedom Tours. I hope everybody will be able to at least take a self-guided tour or join a guided tour sometime. Hopefully coming up in the summer, you can actually get to all of these sites. We did record the program, and we will have the video on our YouTube page in the next few weeks, and we will include all of the links to the comms websites. Should be able to have more information to join a tour. The next program that we have coming up in 2 weeks on February 26th, we'll be moving into a President's Day theme. We'll be joined by Gina Aleo Gordon, who'll be presenting as Mrs. Thomas Jefferson. So from the Civil War back in time a bit to the early 19th century to the wife of Thomas Jefferson. She'll be presenting her kind of a personal view of presidential history. So that'll be February 26th at 2 o'clock. Again, same bat time, same bat channel, all of that. Thank you for joining us. Have a lovely weekend and happy Valentine's Day, everybody.
Thank you.
Happy
Bye.
Valentine's Day.
Thanks,
Thank you.